evening and welcome to the Carnegie Town Hall. This meeting of the City Council will begin in a few moments. The City Council meets on the first, second, and third Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. and serves as the city's policymaking and legislative body. Each meeting is governed by Robert's Rule of Order unless those guidelines conflict with city ordinance or charter. City Council meetings offer an opportunity for citizens to speak directly to their elected representatives. Those in attendance are invited to address the Council during the public input segment at the beginning of the agenda. At that time, any issue that is not subject to formal action later in the agenda can be addressed. Testimony that concerns a resolution or an ordinance's second reading is only allowed when those specific agenda items are being addressed by the Council. When addressing the Council, citizens should speak directly into the microphones at the podium and state their names for the record after being recognized by the chair. To accommodate and respect all viewpoints, citizen comments are limited by ordinance to no more than 5 minutes each. Comments should be respectful and focused on providing new information that will benefit the Council's deliberative process. By city ordinance, all remarks must be addressed to the City Council as a body and not to any City Council member, including the mayor. The chair reserves the right to limit the number of speakers. City Council meetings are broadcast live on CityLink and online at siouxfalls.org. Information regarding the City Council, its committees, meetings, briefings, and members is available by visiting siouxfalls.org/council or by calling the Council office at 605-367-8085. Thank you for your interest in Sioux Falls City Government.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. Just love the turnout. Thank you so much for being here today. It is Tuesday, December 12th, and we will start our City Council meeting by introducing you to your City Council.
Council members Erickson. Here. Erpenbach. Here. Kiley.
Here.
Neitzer.
Here.
Rolfing.
Here.
Selberg.
Present.
Starr. Staley. Here.
Councilors, thanks for being here tonight. We appreciate it. In the city of Sioux Falls, we begin every City Council meeting with an invocation or a blessing. And back with us is Pastor Carmen Van Scoik. And Pastor Carmen is with Celebrate Church, one of the fastest growing churches not only in Sioux Falls, but in the Midwest. And we're certainly pleased that they're making their presence known here. And Pastor, thank you for coming back. What we'd ask is that you stand for the pastor's invocation, and then please remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Carmen.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, this evening we have so much to be grateful for. During the season of giving, we first of all thank you for how you gave us your Son, Jesus Christ, that he would live among us and provide a way for us to experience a relationship with you. What a great God you are. We also thank you that as citizens of this great country, we have the privilege of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We pray that you would give wisdom and courage to those in our federal government, that they would work together in the spirit of cooperation for what is best for us as a nation. Tonight, we specifically come to you on behalf of the people of Sioux Falls, that you would look favorably upon those who have gathered here in this room, and specifically those in leadership and governing positions. I pray for our mayor, Mike Huther, that you would bless him and his leadership. I pray for your favor upon him as he leads our great city, for which many of us are so proud to live in. I pray the same for Christine, for Michelle, Rick, Greg, Rex, Marshall, Pat, and Teresa. Collectively, I ask that you give them wisdom and courage to do what is both right and fair. Bless each of them as they graciously serve the people of Sioux Falls. It's in the name of Jesus Christ that we pray these things. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. My name is Bill O'Toole. I'm the Director of Human Resources. And each year, we appreciate the opportunity to recognize some outstanding city employees. We have 3 prestigious awards tonight that we're going to present to some city employees. And I want to thank the mayor and the city council for allowing us some time tonight for these awards. Recognition is very important for us here at the city of Sioux Falls. I'm going to describe each of those awards, and the mayor and I are going to handle the presentation of those awards collectively. So thank you tonight. The first award is the V.L. Crusenberry Award, and it was established in memory of former Mayor V.L. Crusenberry and recognizes and honors annually a non-management employee who demonstrates exceptional performance, judgment, productivity, loyalty, professional pride, and other noteworthy accomplishments in relation to city employment. The next award will be the Gene Fullenkamp Management Excellence Award, and it was established in memory of former Human Resources Manager Gene Fullenkamp, and recognizes and honors annually a high performer and leader in the mid-management employee group whose performance drives change, builds commitment, maximizes talent, and focuses on excellence in customer service. And the last award will be the Employee Excellence and Safety Award. And it recognizes a city employee who has made significant and measurable contribution toward achieving the city's safety objectives. And tonight, the mayor is going to be presenting the first 2 awards, of which he selects the winner of. And then the Employee Safety Awards are chosen by a steering committee comprised of Jerry Jungling, Dustin Hanson, Sandy Frentz, Regan Smith, Carol Foster, and Rana DeBoer. So with that, we'll kick it off with the mayor with the first 2 awards.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. The Crusenberry Award is very, very special in that these are the people, the women and the men that serve with you every day that are really on the front lines. They are doing things all over this great city and making a great difference. And remember, folks, we've got around 1,300 city employees. And so to receive this award is really, really special. To be nominated for the award is also a big, big deal. So I do want to at least let the people of our great city know who was nominated for the Crusenberry Award. Shandy Dvorak, a lead equipment operator with our Public Works Street Team. Brent Booth. Brent is a police officer on our police team. Sue Carlson, a library associate with Siouxland Libraries. Al Retker, community development program specialist with community development. Tony Schneider, he's an engineering technician too, works on our public works and engineering team. Mike Gramlich. Mike is a fire captain with our fire rescue team here in Sioux Falls. And then finally, Mary Knight, who's a clinic and lab aide with our health department with Falls Community Health. If you wouldn't mind, let's just recognize them with a round of applause. I really found this challenging this year. I mean, every year is really challenging, but what I did is I actually selected 2 winners this year for this award. And not only are they here, but hopefully their family is here as well. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like Tony Schneider to come forward, please. Tony? Well, I'm not going to let him leave without telling you a little bit about Tony, and I'm not going to read the entire nomination, but just a little bit. Tony has been a staple employee for engineering for 27 plus years. Tony's always one of the first to accept new work assignments, excited to undertake new challenges. 2 special projects that Tony was involved in this past year have certainly distinguished Tony beyond his typical outstanding performance. Tony was instrumental in establishing a database of the entire sidewalk system of our great city. Tony was so energized to complete the task on time that he actually decided to forego his annual vacation to Sturgis. What were you thinking? to keep the team progressing. He adjusted his work schedule weekly so that the crews could work early in the mornings during the very hot periods of the summer. The second special project Tony is actively involved in is the upgrade of technologies with the Water Division Records Management. With some limited direction from the Public Works Operation Manager, Dean Burkhart, Tony researched for the most capable and cost-effective technologies that could be utilized to bring the team from a paper record era to a modern and digitized era of asset record management. Tony and his wife Tammy, thanks for being here today, are proud parents of 3 adult daughters, 2 of which are here, Michaela, Monica, and Teresa. Tony's also a recent volunteer who serves at the banquet, and he's an active member of the Knights of Columbus. He was also an active member of the Sioux Falls O'Gorman Booster Club. He is a regular volunteer for snow removal duties as well, rarely, if ever, refusing an assignment. His nominee, Jeff Delores, wrote, "Tony is one of the most reliable and dedicated city employees to serve our public." Tony, thank you. Congratulations. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. Our next winner is Captain Mike Gramlich. Captain, come forward, please. Welcome, family. Good to have you here. Thank you. Thank you. Captain Mike Gramlich is a consummate champion for Sioux Falls Fire Rescue. Michael is a firm believer that in order to succeed, someone doesn't inherently have to lose. When we make the right and ethical choice, everyone wins. One of Michael's strongest suits is collaboration. Michael utilizes his charismatic style to bring people together for positive change. Sioux Falls Fire Rescue has had a model of union management cooperation for a long, long time. The positive working environment that this collaboration instills is palpable in our members and measurable in our accomplishments. Outside of our department, Michael has spent countless hours fostering relationships and building the Step Up for Heroes program as a grassroots effort to help those that need it most. Michael is not as concerned with personal success as he is with setting up our organization, our fire rescue organization, and the next generation of leaders to build what we have started. He was nominated by Battalion Chief Matt McAreevy, and is Battalion Chief here? Thank you, Battalion Chief, for being here. And again, before we get this round of applause, is this your family, Michael?
Yes, this is my family. My wife, my daughter, my wife, my sister, my nephew, my mother, another nephew, my sister, and her husband.
Mom's even here?
Mom is here.
I love it. I love it. Well, proud of all of you, and Michael, proud of you too. Congratulations, everybody. Nice job. Thank you. And Bill, would you not only do they get the trophy, but they also receive a $500 cash award as well. So thank you, taxpayers. Thank you, citizens, for that. Appreciate it. The Fullenkamp Award. One of the things that I think folks need to understand is that, yes, all those people on the front line are so critical to getting things done for our citizens and our visitors and so much more. But it's those coaches, those managers, those mentors, those leaders that also play a really, really vital difference. And that's what the Fullenkamp Award acknowledges, are those people that are also motivating others. And So once again, I struggled. Sorry, Council. I picked two. I'm lame duck. I can do that, right? But really, really proud of these winners. The first one is Shauna Nelson. Please come forward, please. Shauna supports the largest division in the city of Sioux Falls. She's on our finance team. She's a business analyst. She gets to know the people and the jobs within Public Works. She gets out to every department and actually works with the staff. No kidding. She's a business analyst, but she will go out and fill potholes, move bricks, work on office practices, walk the side of the landfill, and so much more. Shauna diligently reviews each line item of the budget and fully supports it if it is essential. But she will also give a stern no when the request does not have merit. The implementation of the city's financial software Munis was a substantial undertaking. Shauna tested every aspect of the system and learned how it worked inside and out. She then worked to train the users in each department one by one. Shauna Nelson is the financial support system for Public Works. She will help analyze any new business practice opportunities and determine the benefit to the department. She's also been the United Way Department rep for the finance team for the last 3 years. The last line in her nomination was by Jerry Jongling and Dustin Hanson of our Public Works. The last line in her nomination was, Shauna is a leader and a game changer for the city of Sioux Falls. Congratulations. The next full-in-camp winner is Weston Phillips. Weston is our Public Works and Engineering Department. Weston, come forward, please. Wes is a principal engineer, of course, on our Public Works and Engineering team. Wes Phillips has been a city employee since 2006. He has served as a principal engineer in streets since 2009. Wes has instituted a number of modifications to the streets program during his tenure. New technologies, products, and processes have been researched, tested, and tried by Wes and his street team. Things like slurry seal program, Techcrete, warm mix asphalt, they've been implemented, as well as the successful overlay newsletter. And for those of you who want to know what's going on in the city, in terms of your streets, this was a big one. Keeping the residents and citizens more informed adds to the progress of the overlay program on their streets and in their neighborhoods. Wes has been deeply involved with a project that will help the city become more compliant with the ADA, or American with Disabilities Act. And he also recently authored the Sidewalk Network and Assessment Report. He's an active member of the South Dakota Engineering Society, where he was voted by his peers as Young Engineer of the Year. He's currently volunteering as a mentor at a local elementary school, also serves at the banquet, is a talented musician, and performs with various ensembles at his church. Wife and his wife, Rachel, thank you, are the proud parents of 2 daughters, Nora and Adeline. Congratulations.
All right, next up is the Employee Safety Awards. And again, this year's nominees included Josh Brinkman and Megan Bolt from Parks and Recreation, Harlan Haviland from Community Development and Public Parking, John Nelson, Public Works and Water Purification, Darwin Plucker, Central Services and Fleet, and Troy Scandon from Sioux Falls Fire Rescue. Let's please give those folks a round of applause as well. Again, on behalf of the Safety Steering Committee tonight, it's my privilege to announce our first winner is Captain Troy Scandon. Captain Scandon. Captain Scandon is a consummate safety professional and an integral component of the Sioux Falls Fire Rescue Health and Safety Committee. He is a role model to all 250 members of the department, specifically the 14 Health and Safety Committee members he serves with. He is a selfless leader and teammate that exemplifies respect, integrity, service, and excellence. This past year, Troy spent 5 months working on a hearing conservation program for Sioux Falls Fire Rescue. He conducted a needs assessment and developed a strategic plan for the project, including presentation of goals, objectives, and outcomes for a comprehensive hearing conservation plan. He appropriately conducted a budgetary cost estimate to request the necessary funding to support the project, and then worked collectively with the multiple stakeholders to successfully establish a formalized program and policy for Sioux Falls Fire Rescue. This research project will potentially save significant dollars in preventable hearing loss and lost work time. His work will also increase the quality of the employment life cycle in his fellow firefighters and will impact all city employees through this model program. His innovation, determination, and drive on the hearing conservation program align with the mission of Sioux Falls Fire Rescue. Troy truly wants what is best for each and every person living and working in the city of Sioux Falls. Congratulations, Captain Scandon. Thank you. In the spirit of 2 awards, we're not finished yet. The Safety Committee took the cue from the mayor, and it's also my privilege and honor to introduce Josh Brinkman and Megan Bolt. Would you please come forward? Both Megan and Josh are members of the Parks and Recreation Safety Team. This year, they set a work goal to develop a program to provide the 200-plus seasonal employees safety training. Megan and Josh volunteered to take the lead on the development and produce a highly impactful and engaging product that will serve the department for years to come. Collaboratively, the safety team decided that all seasonal operation employees would receive mandatory training on general and job-specific safety. Megan and Josh developed what was called a safety passport for the training to provide both structure and accountability to the employee and the department. In addition, they also helped to develop the core competencies for full-time employees and package the competencies into a monthly training schedule for easy and effective delivery. Josh and Megan embraced a can-do attitude and engaged employees throughout the department to put safety first within their jobs. These 2 individuals are to be commended for stepping up to the challenge and in making it work throughout each of the 20 park operations work teams. Congratulations to you both.
And City, we won't let them break that in half. We'll get them each an award, I promise. And folks, there's no way I can leave. I made a mistake. Remember, I said it's really, really important to be nominated for the award too. And with the Fullenkamp Award, I didn't announce the other nominees, and I'm not leaving until we do. The nominees for the Fullenkamp Award, of which Shauna and Wes won. Here's the other tremendous individuals that were nominated: Jeff Helm, Fire Division Chief with Fire Rescue; Police Lieutenant Dave McIntyre of our police team; Kim Koblank, a librarian with Siouxland Libraries; of course Shauna Nelson, the business analyst in our finance team; Wes Phillips, the principal engineer, of course, who won with the public works team; but also Tim Conda. Tim's a business analyst of our finance team. Mary Michaels, Mary's with our public health prevention team, and she's a coordinator there. And then 4 people from our parks team. They were nominated as one because of all their work that they did with the Midco Aquatic Center. Jean Pearson, who's a recreation program coordinator. Kelby Maris, park operations manager. Rich Carlson, a district park supervisor. And Tori Miedema, a park development specialist with our parks and recreation team. Let's give them all a round of applause. Then last but not least, I'm going to just, if you wouldn't mind, those winners and their families. City of Sioux Falls, you have to realize these are 6 employees, 6, and their families out of over 1,250. So imagine all the sacrifice, all the work that all these men and their women, and yes, their families are doing on your behalf. This is just a very, very small snippet of the people that are doing that, and so then magnify it by an extra, 1,250 people on top. So one last time, winners, if you wouldn't mind standing up, your families stand up, because we got a big thank you to give to you. Thank you. City Council, I truly, truly thank you for that opportunity. We appreciate it. We know how much you appreciate their work as well. Council, now we'll move on to our consent agenda. Any motions or changes to that?
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second, Selberg.
Councilor Erickson's made a motion to approve our consent agenda, seconded by Councilor Selberg. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Neitzer,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Now our regular agenda. Council, any changes to that?
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second, Kiley.
Council Vice Chair Erickson would like to approve our regular agenda, seconded by Councilor Chair Kiley. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Neitzer,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you. Folks, again, welcome, excuse me, to our meeting tonight. We certainly appreciate your attendance. This is also an opportunity for you to engage the council on any topic of your choosing, as long as it's not on the agenda later on as a second reading. So, folks, if you want, just come forward, state your name. We'd ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, and just be as professional as you can in terms of engaging the council as a whole. Welcome.
Scott Ersman, Sioux Falls. I'm going to have Jim put up a graphic here. Over the weekend, I went out for a walk in my neighborhood there. As you can see from the graphic, anything that's highlighted green, it's all railroad tracks, and they were all completely full of rail cars, including petroleum, waste, all different kinds of things. There was probably well over 40 to 50 cars. They were stored on, as you can see there, between 14th and 12th on either side of Cliff. They were over the rail bridge, over the river. They were next to House Oil. They were parked over by the hospital. And they're only 4 blocks south of where we got rid of a rail yard, switching yard. Now, when we gave the railroads $27 million, part of the deal was not just to purchase the land. Part of the deal was to build a new switching yard. So I'm a little confused as to why there was over 50 cars parked on all these different spots downtown, only 4 blocks south of land, 4 blocks south of land that we purchased. As you can see there, I have just 4 blocks away. Now, it's unfortunate because when we were negotiating this with the rail, the public was not let in on any of it. It was a secret negotiation. There were secret plane trips taken and all kinds of things. But I'm baffled by why, and during this negotiation of $27 million of federal taxpayer money, that we didn't stipulate that we're removing a switching yard and buying you a switching yard so that you don't park your trains downtown anymore. As you can see, they're parking them all over. And this has been going on for several weekends. I actually walked all of this and looked at the different cars and all kinds of different kinds of storage in cars. And so I'm a little disappointed. I'm hoping that the city can talk to the rail yards about this and remind them of the $27 million in taxpayer money that we gave them, and remind them one of the reasons why we purchased this switching yard was so that you wouldn't be doing this stuff in our town anymore. Now you can they're gonna have to still run the trains through, obviously with house oil there and Springer lumber, but I'm really disappointed that they're continuing to park their trains all over downtown. I want to talk about something else now. Earlier today, they were talking about the golf course contract and RFPs and stuff. So I did a little research on state law. And I looked at different codified laws on RFPs and contracts. While state law, it is true, it says that a city can keep these RFPs confidential and from the public. But also, it can also not keep them public. In other words, it is the city's choice. And so to say that we're doing, somebody says we're doing something sinister, well, the best way to make sure the public doesn't think we're doing something sinister is to open the books and make it transparent. You know what I was thinking about when I was driving over here? I have never heard of one single case in the entire state of South Dakota where a municipality got in trouble because they were too open. Isn't that funny? A lot of them got in trouble for not being open, but there wasn't too many that got in trouble for being too open. So it's the city's choice. So for the city to constantly come back and say, hey, state law says we got to keep this confidential, that's not true. They can either keep it confidential or not confidential. It is the city's choice. And the city of Sioux Falls, as we all know, continues to choose to keep things secret. Hopefully that'll change next May. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Welcome. And folks, if you want to speak, just come on up to the front row, if you don't mind. Welcome.
Briefly.
No, take your time.
Jeff Davis, I live in Prairie Meadows. First off, I want to say thanks for letting the citizens have input in the annexation task force. Basically, my goal at the front of that was to come up with a cookie cutter fair way for everybody to be handled in annexation. I'm not sure that that's possible, but what I would ask tonight is once again say thanks, but as a group that you give your frontline people the latitude during annexations that'll come up in the future to take credit for the development around unannexed areas that lower the cost and responsibility for things around annexed areas that raise the cost to the citizens involved. I would ask you to look carefully at all those things and the cost. And the one thing that we all tried to keep in mind was that we're not annexing land, we're bringing in people, and that the effect that has on them can be a long, long time. If you can't afford $300 a month for 3 years, you sure can't afford it for 20 years. And I think that the resolution has a lot of good points in it. I think that the real key is that it has to be reasonable for all of us. The residents also have to be reasonable for the city, our city. And I hope that you can acknowledge the contributions financially that even unannexed areas have made to the city of Sioux Falls. All of the unannexed areas, almost all of the annexed areas and unannexed areas have contributed all their sales tax dollars to Sioux Falls for however many years. So it's not like, and most of them fund their own fire and water. So looking forward, I'm hoping that we can review areas like my own area, Prairie Meadows, which I think is probably going to be one of your tougher ones. I think the residents need a fair shake, and I'm hoping that you'll give the public works people and the engineers the latitude to tell you that, well, maybe we shouldn't have done this or that, or on the other hand, well, they got a break with the CIP project on 41st, something like that. You know, I think it has to be more than just bang the gavel, have a policy. I wish there was one that made it free for everybody, including the city, but there isn't. So I ask that we take all these things in our resolution in consideration, and that we acknowledge our successes in the development around those areas, and we acknowledge our mistakes that lead up to the excessive cost of annexation. But hopefully the resolution is good for all of you. I know I think it was a move going forward for all of us. Thank you.
Mr. Davis, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And Council, I realize that it was probably tied to item number 12. Mr. Davis used about 3 minutes, and so I don't know if he would like to come up later on, but I tracked that. So thank you. Welcome.
Robert Colby. Reflecting on something that was recently said here, how many states are there in the United States? You probably say 50, but I've learned there are 52. Army Corps of Engineers and the railroads. There's no political entity that has any governance over the Army Corps of Engineers or the railroads except the U.S. Congress, and they have more lobbyists working on them than working on you. So when you work with them, you can tell them what you want till you're blue in the face and nothing will happen. I was reflecting on the season here, and one of the things that I've learned is, you kind of do some reflection. I've been watching Christmases for over 70 years and waiting for Santa Claus, and he always came when we went up to the end of the driveway or during the church program. And then after it didn't seem like too long, suddenly I am Santa Claus. We had a lot of traditions that we reflect on. I don't think any of us reflect on anything that's, that's too commercial. We have our own personal things that we do. One of the things that I learned that was usurped as I got a little more politically involved, it seems like there are a lot of people in politics and in the power positions that put on their mistletoe coat. And it's not that it's covered with green and red and berries. It has a sprig of mistletoe somewhere about where my left hand is, and they oblige those who are beneath them to perform the tradition. In this light of the political situation and the other things that are happening in our country at the moment, I would advise you to not get involved with the mistletoe and the coat and any other position. I think it's something to be avoided. And maybe when you were giving awards for the people who've done good here, that maybe the city employees might think about having a mistletoe award each year, because that might give you a little indication of how your power position people here, those who are in charge, how well they're doing, because that's not part of the way to operate when you have people do things because you are there. It always seems to happen that after a while, no matter who you are and how powerful you might be, you have to take the coat off, and pretty soon no one pays attention to you. So you're better off not ever having to acquire that coat, as it were. Thank you, and I hope you have a good season as this time of the year. And as our POTUS would say, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and all of the other 20-some-odd holy days for various religions that happen between the 1st of December and the end of January. Thank you.
Folks, did anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Zach DeBoer. I didn't have a chance to give my thoughts about the parking ramp project last week due to public input being canceled prematurely. But because of that, I'd like to share my thoughts and concerns with the council tonight. Overall, I'm in favor of this project. It increases density in the core, it adds to our taxable revenue, it vastly expands commercial real estate in downtown's busiest corridor, and the added hotel rooms will bring additional guests to our downtown businesses. All great things. As we move forward on this project, I do have a few concerns that I feel should be addressed. The first is bicycle amenities. Will there be bicycle parking provided in the new ramp? Fargo recently completed a project that's very similar to this one. It's a P3, they're apartments instead of a hotel, very similar. They not only included covered bicycle parking, but also a bicycle repair station and a separate entrance into the ramp for the bicycles. I believe the city needs to prove that it views bicycling as a legitimate and valued mode of transportation by including bicycle facilities in the new ramp. Next, if we want to truly achieve the kind of street life and activities seen in the renderings for this project, we need to make a safer, more inviting environment for pedestrians. We all know that 10th Street is a busy road. Cars zoom by at speeds around 30 miles an hour. And if you've ever walked or driven on that road during rush hour, you know it's not a place you'd want your kids to walk along or where you'd want to have a dinner outside. To slow the cars down, we could do what we did on Main Avenue and do a little bit of a road diet to add angled parking in front of those new commercial spaces. Additional on-street parking was also identified by Walker Parking Consultants as a need in downtown. So this could be a great way to increase those options for shoppers making quick stops. Alternatively, we go the other way, and the 5 to 6 existing parallel spaces could be removed entirely to increase the amount of pedestrian space, leaving more room for cafes, for trees, landscaping, public art like Sculpture Walk. Either option would shrink the driving lanes, encourage cars to slow down, and create a better place that people want to go. On the subject of public art, it's worth mentioning I'm the vice chair of the Visual Arts Commission, and I'd love for Darren Ketchum or anybody involved in the project to reach out to myself or the VAC City Liaison, Russ Sorensen, so we could discuss what role, if any, public art could play in this project. Final thing, the city has stated that this project will fulfill our parking needs for the next decade. My question is, should we be spending so much money during this period of slow sales tax growth on a single mega project? Could we spend less on our portion of the project, build fewer parking spaces, and save money for future P3s? Should we build a decade's worth of parking if we don't need the spaces now? As some of the opponents of this project have pointed out, this ramp doesn't solve our parking problem. By most accounts, the best part of this project is the economic impact that the hotel will have on downtown and the city. Why not lean into that idea and slowly add to our parking supply in small chunks while simultaneously stimulating additional development downtown? Developing multiple smaller projects over a period of time instead of a single mega project should reduce the financial risk and investment by the city, create additional sales tax growth, stimulate additional growth in our downtown, and it gives us the ability to make incremental adjustments to our parking plan to meet our needs. All of that plus the existing benefits the hotel will bring. Now, what I'm saying could be completely wrong and complete nonsense, but that's the real problem of how this project came to be. There wasn't enough time given to the public or even the council for input. The choice was yes or no. So I wish this project had been voted down last week, or at least paused. Not because it isn't a phenomenal investment in downtown and our city as a whole, but because a project like this deserves to be held up to public scrutiny and discussed further. If that means that the groundbreaking ceremony has to be pushed back a few months into the summer, I think it'll be worth the wait to ensure the people of Sioux Falls are spending their money on smart investments that will grow our city. Finally, I'd like to take a moment to publicly thank Councilor Starr and Councilor Neitzer. Last Tuesday, I reached out to both of them in the morning to see if they could spare 5 minutes of their day to answer some questions that I had about the parking ramp. Both of them spent about 20 minutes on the phone with me discussing the issues and helping me find the answers that I was looking for. So thank you again to both of you for showing me how local government should work. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Welcome.
Greetings. My name is David Zalkaitis, and have just a few more thoughts about the parking ramp complex and the costs thereof. Now, from the data that we have, there was a Walker report a few years ago that says we need $9 million to put up a parking ramp. Okay, well, somehow that has morphed into $21 million. Well, that's $12 million extra. That's more than a factor of 2. Now, I'm trying to figure out what that other $12 million is for, and I guess there's 4 likely things. One is, you know, we've had a little bit of inflation in 3 years, and another is, well, we've got to support this hotel aesthetically, because the hotel goes on top of the parking ramp. And then we need to support the hotel structurally, and it's got to take money to make that extra strong foundation. And then, you know, if that doesn't add up to 12 million, there might be a few million dollars in there that's a gift to the builder. I'm wondering. I would like some data. Well, and then there's this building site lease that somehow got evaluated at $1 million with some secret appraisal. Maybe it's worth $5 million, but I really don't know. I would like, again, some data. Maybe this is another gift to another business, and it looks suspicious. I don't really like secrecy. Okay, so the way to fix this and to restore confidence in local government is to get 2 independent public estimates or appraisals. We need one for the parking ramp construction costs, and we need another one to get an appraisal of those building rights to see if they're worth $1 million or $5 million. That would really help. That's fine. And now the city council here has budgetary authority. So if you all decided that you wanted to get those 2 estimates, you could change the budget and say, hey, we need 10 grand for these 2 estimates. And then you could get that appraisal and get those estimates done, and then we could know for sure how good of a deal the city is really getting on this parking ramp complex. So that's kind of my recommendation. Okay. Now, in case you haven't noticed, I'm a little on the colorful side. Like to enjoy life now and again. And sometimes council meetings are hard, so we're going to change this one a little bit. I have noticed now and again that there's been a little bit of music in the council meeting. So I'd like to share that a song that I wrote for the Parade of Lights. It's an original, and it's kind of fun, and it really shows my philosophy and what I would like to do if I get to be mayor. So here's verse 1.
Join in this parade of lights, help to brighten this night's light of truth shines through, shining through me and you too. As we grow with truth and love, we feel grace above. We become a parade of lights, harmony together this night. Pledge allegiance, my friends, to this land that never ends. Let our republic stand strong as we gather in this throng. Pledge allegiance to justice, correct creed that busts us. With truth as our guide, don't let tyranny slide. Light enters this darkness, pulls us from the abyss. Liberty and justice for all, we must never let it fall.
So there you go. And with that and a few smiles along the way, I bid everybody a good evening.
Welcome, Tim.
It's hard to beat that one. Tim Stanga. I also go out on Rice Street out to Brandon, and I get stuck with the railroad. 20 minutes. And sitting on that road for 20 minutes is just like in the middle of the desert. And I don't know if that's what we planned on doing with the railroad, is pushing it to one side so everybody else has to sit for the railroad. I haven't quite figured it out. One thing that I do, usually take a few of these cards with me every meeting. And what I do is when people ask me questions about, well, what was the deal on this meeting or what happened here, I hand them out to people. So everybody has your phone numbers, they have your names, and it's public. They say they call, some people answer, some people don't, some people return their phone calls, some people don't. I told them, I said, don't feel bad, they do that to me too. It's also stated last week that we paid down the water Lewis and Clark project. But as I can remember, we raised water rates 2 or 3 times within the last, I don't know how many years. And I almost think that we owe the public a thank you for overspending on their water bills, so we end up with that kind of a slush fund to be able to pay the Lewis and Clark project down. Last week was a little bit different, but as I went around town this week and last week, a lot of people asked me what happened at the city council meeting. And I explained how I seen it, and I come down here every week and I explain that we want to get rid of public input. We don't want to have people talking from the public. Told them what happened, and they come up with their own opinion. But when it comes down to when you got one person that comes out and says that Pat was grandstanding for the public, Pat, the people of Sioux Falls thank you for what you did. I have not heard I haven't heard one bad comment yet. But they also want to know, are you thinking about running for mayor?
Folks, did anybody else want to engage the council? Thank you. Council? Item number 7.
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, approving the naming of a facility space on public property.
Good evening. I'm Mike Cooper with Planning and Building Services, and I'm presenting this tonight as the chair of the City Naming Committee. Tonight we have a first reading of an application submitted by the Washington Pavilion for a naming opportunity of changing the Discovery Gift Store area to a new name of Jack's Imagination Lab, which will be sponsored by South Dakota State University, located in Brookings, South Dakota. The Jack's Imagination Lab is a space that's currently about 600 square feet on the second floor of the pavilion, near the entrance into the Science and Discovery Center. The naming agreement that's being attached to this sponsorship will be for a period of 5 years at the rate of $25,000 per year. This naming request was presented to the naming committee at the November 17th meeting with a unanimous recommendation for approval. And tonight, Darren Smith, representing the Washington Pavilion, also has a few comments to give you a little bit more background of how we got to this proposal for your consideration tonight. So, Mayor, with your approval, I'll turn it over to Darren.
Thanks, Mike. Welcome, Darren.
Good evening, Darren Smith, Washington Pavilion. Mike hit on all the highlights with respect to the terms of the agreement. Just to add a little, provide some context and some perspective, as Mike said, this is the former Discovery gift shop. It's at the entrance to the Science Center. It's a very high traffic, very valuable space. And it's also a space that, quite honestly, in its 18 years of existence as a gift shop since the pavilion opened, really just did not have a lot of appeal. Did not provide benefit to patrons. Is not much of a revenue-generating space for us, and I think that was for a lot of reasons. So earlier this year, we wanted to look at this space among several others in the pavilion and how could they benefit patrons at a higher level? How could we utilize them in terms of generating additional revenue to support our efforts throughout the building? And so at that time is when we started talking to South Dakota State University. This is a very strong market for them, as you might imagine, in getting students up to Brookings. So we have 80,000 young people, students, parents and grandparents who come through the Science Center and the entrance to the Science Center each year. So that was very attractive for them and very attractive for us. So we'll focus in that space with SDSU as a partner on what's called STEAM curriculum, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And that's, we'll provide opportunities in those core areas along with South Dakota State University. So we're very excited about it.
Darren, thank you. Councilors? Yes, Councilor Silber, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Darren. Quick question. Have you sold, sponsorships like this in the past, and are there more sponsorships like that available?
Yes, absolutely. There certainly is a history of doing that at the pavilion, but the last couple of years we've really tried to ramp that up, and we have some others that will be coming also. So we'll have several in the next 4 to 6 months that we'll be announcing. Most of those are in fact sponsorships. This is a naming of a space, and so that's why we're here tonight. The sponsorships don't require approval from the city, but to rename a physical space, it does. And we were renaming this space anyway because it's being converted from a gift shop to something else. But we're going to call it Jack's Imagination Lab. And so SDSU is pretty excited about that, and we are too.
Right. Oh, great. Thanks.
Councilor Rolfing?
Yes. Are you going to, Darren, are you going to have anything for gift shop at all then? Or are you going to have something much smaller? Or
yes, and much smaller and more mobile. And so what we're going to look at is addressing that need down in our lobby area, which I think is much more conducive in terms of a retail environment. We've also figured out over the years what our patrons like, and so we want to limit it to those things. We had inventory on the shelf in the Discovery gift shop for 4 years. Not anymore. We've sold it and we're transitioning to this, but it wasn't an effective space for retail.
You know that some people on the council might have a little trouble voting for something Jack's, and I'm thinking if we can change that maybe to Jack and a Beanstalk or something like that.
Counselor, I attended USD.
Oh.
And I am proudly wearing a blue shirt and yellow tie tonight. And we've also had some initial conversations with the University of South Dakota. They have a strong interest in this market as well. So we'll see.
You might try a little blue and gold down the street too. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Councilor Buck.
I was just going to caution Councilor Rolfing to be careful what he says, but I was also going to congratulate, Mr. Harbord on the planes over there for your blue and yellow. So nicely done. But it's a great idea. I was honestly surprised by it. So it's a neat idea. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Staley.
Question. Darren, after 5 years, then do you take all the logo down?
Well, our hope would be that both ourselves and South Dakota State University are very happy with the partnership, that they've received tremendous value out of the space and the sponsorship, and that we would continue the relationship. If for some reason we didn't, then yes, what we would do is remove the name, and then we would pursue a new opportunity or something else for that space.
But if they're going to continue, then you would renew the contract then?
Correct.
They wouldn't be allowed to have that up there just with an ongoing thing?
It would have to be as part of an agreement. Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
Council, would anybody want to set a date of hearing, second reading for Tuesday, December 19th for this item?
Be pleased to do that.
Thank you, Council Chair.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Urbanbach. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Urbanbach?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you. Item 8, please.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, setting the regular city election date for Tuesday, April 10, 2018, and authorizing a joint election with the Sioux Falls School District Number 49-5.
Tom, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. This ordinance is something that we typically do for our municipal elections. On November 27th, the Sioux Falls School District chose by resolution to combine with us for the April 10th election. This action, in accordance with our charter and state law, requires an action by this governing body as well to combine with the Sioux Falls School District, which I recommend. This is the first reading. The second reading would be next week. Subject to your questions, that's all I have.
Thanks, Tom. Councilor Neisert?
Tom, the citizens that were redistricted, are they going to get any sort of a special letter or notification, or will they just get the normal card that everybody gets about where they vote?
Well, not everybody gets a postcard, but they'll get a postcard indicating that their precinct designation changed.
When you say not everybody gets a postcard, what determines who gets a postcard and who wouldn't?
The folks who've had their precincts change will get a postcard to include new polling places, for example, will get a postcard. Those are the people that will get one.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Councilor Staley?
How many precincts are we going to be having this year?
So we have 66 precincts at 55 locations. So some places are doubled up or tripled up on precincts, and that's something I should have mentioned. This ordinance also designates the fact that we're going to utilize precincts opposed to vote centers.
And then what's the cost breakdown then when the school district comes on board?
The school district, well, we have already set our budget. But the school district, by agreement, will pay a certain amount of that, and that comes out to a little over $16,000. That's
right,
the cost of their last standalone election. So our regular election, we've allocated or we've budgeted about $95,000 for the regular and close to $80,000 for the runoff. They obviously wouldn't be involved in the runoff.
So how do you determine that it's 16,000 versus like paying for half of it?
It is by agreement, and I could go through, there's about 15 different items that they capture, but basically they take the cost of their last standalone election and they capture costs like card stock, basically the cost to run the election, and that cost is passed on to us, and ultimately that's what they will pay us.
And then if I remember, several years ago when we paired up with this, it was before you came on board, but we had some logistical problems with ballots and how closely you're going to be working with.
We work very closely with them, but by this agreement, the way it's set up, they will take certain actions. They'll publish the notice of vacancies in January, just like we do, saying what offices are open. But beyond that, we generally handle the logistics of the election itself to include basically the allocation of ballots, and we do work very closely, obviously, with the school district. Last time we stayed in close coordination with them, talked to them about ballot allocation, but by this agreement, that's essentially the logistics are our responsibility.
One more question. Then, are they going to be rounding up workers as well, or is the burden going to be just on you?
We'll be rounding up workers. Again, we get lists from them of who they have used in the past. Consequently, we're pretty far along on workers right now and don't anticipate any issues.
Thank you.
Yep.
Council, would anybody want to set a date of hearing, second reading for Tuesday, December 19th for this item?
So moved, Rolfing.
Second, Erickson.
Rolfing's made that motion, seconded by Councilor Vice Chair Erickson. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Kylie? Yes. Neitzer?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you, Council. Item 9.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, authorizing the issuance of its storm drainage system revenue bonds to the South Dakota Conservancy District, authorizing the use of the proceeds thereof for capital improvements, pledging a portion of the storm drainage system revenue of the city for the payment of said storm drainage system revenue bonds, fixing the terms of such said storm drainage system revenue bonds, authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement between the city and the South Dakota Conservancy District, and authorizing the execution and delivery of such storm drainage system revenue bonds to the South Dakota Conservancy District, $8,829,000.
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Tonight we will bring forward to you, it's the first reading of a loan from the state of South Dakota. It's a program that we've accessed a number of times to secure low interest, very favorable term loans. This particular one will be a 10-year term at 1% interest. We do have our legal team with us, with also our bond counsel and Dean Borkhardt, our business operations manager, so hopefully we can get through your questions tonight. We just have a short presentation to kind of frame up what the project is. Generally it's in southwest Sioux Falls. We've been working with this neighborhood for a number of years. We first put it in the capital plan back in 2014, and we've been maturing this design so we can make sure that we can bring real positive storm drainage improvements to this neighborhood. In general, as you look at the picture, the land that's essentially west of Marion Road, there's that large area that's in red, that's Marion Park. We've worked closely with the Parks team to actually develop an underground detention cell there, very similar to what we did a number of years ago at Edison, and we've got a couple of pictures of that, Edison Middle School. We'll essentially collect all the stormwater that generally travels from the west to the east, put it in that underground storage system, and then slowly release it so the downstream system can essentially catch up. That will then drain to the interstate ditch and then north to the river. All right, again, just the true purpose and need, many of the structures and this area was mature about 50 years ago before we have our current drainage standards. And so we will be able to bring those up to current speed. It's a significant project because we're not just going in and doing just storm drainage improvements. We also have some areas in here that have hot soils, and so we'll be looking at any water mains that have any break history. We'll be taking care of those. We'll also be bringing ADA ramps up to code, any settled curb, milling and overlaying a number of streets. So over 22 blocks of street work is included in this project. The bottom two pictures are two pictures that took place to put the underground detention system at Edison Middle School. Worked really well with the school district, and then ultimately then we were able to put back their multi-use track on top. That's gone extremely well. This particular one that we are designing for this project, and we even went to a national consultant to do a peer review to get a check on the design. One of the things that we learned with Edison is that we were only filling it in one location and only got about 80% of its usability. So we went back in and fed more storm water into two different areas. Now we've got actually water. We've got water release valves and water comes shooting out of it. So now we know we're at 100% efficiency. So we've captured a number of those lessons learned into this particular design. We'll be putting in 1 mile of 12-foot diameter pipes underneath that particular park. Okay.
Wow.
A number of other items. When we go into a neighborhood, we want to make sure that the water main, sanitary sewer, street lights, asphalt overlay improvements, and other site improvements will be accomplished. Worked again closely with the parks team. That is the only rugby field in Sioux Falls, and so one of the things we'll have the contractor not start until after June so they can still have spring rugby at that park, but then we are working to rebuild the rugby field out at the Sanford Sports Complex. And then that park will just be a typical neighborhood park that the parks will have. Just reframe up some of the project numbers and schedule. So there's two series in this bond. The one to fund the project is $8.4 million. There's a second series. That's the program where if we're willing to reduce the interest rate from 2% to 1%, we take the same amount of dollars that we would normally spend in interest and we invest them up north in the watershed to improve water quality of the Big Sioux River and Skunk Creek. Some of those key programs are bank stabilization, buffer strips, and working with the ag community to better manage their waste. The terms are 10 years, 1% interest rate. We were back here in September. We submitted the facility plan to the DENR in October. We're completing the final design, and we're before you with your moving this forward. What we would ask for, we'd come back to do a second reading. And then just two slides on the bank stabilization, non-point source dollars, the $429,000 that we'll achieve by not paying interest and actually taking that principal out and investing it up north in the watershed has already seen substantial results on reducing sediment and bacteria in our watershed. That's what we have for you tonight. If you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
Mark, thank you. Folks, again, first reading. So, Council, any questions or comments? Council Staley?
So, Mark, now I've got a few questions. Tell the citizens that how we're going to repay that loan. Where will that funding come from?
So the funding for this loan, and I'm just going to go back to the term sheet. The funding for this loan will come from the storm drainage fees. There was a question that came in from a citizen the other day, and they thought that that actually was had some inference of sales tax. There is no sales tax backing of this loan. The storm drainage revenues that people pay on their taxes will support this loan.
So it's going to be paid for by that neighborhood that's benefiting from it?
This is actually paid for by the entire city.
The whole entire, okay,
That's
the
right.
entire, so the people who are being impacted by this and helped, they aren't going to have any extra assessment on their homes.
They will not.
And so if I may, I'm just going to make a little splash over here to Prairie Meadows and ask the question, is there, because they're not in part of our city, but if they were part of our city and they have a water problem right now, would they be able to, could the city use the same loan to help them?
Prairie Meadows actually has qualified for an SRF state revolving fund loan, so they've actually already accessed those same pool of dollars for that, and on top of that, for their wastewater system, have gotten a substantial grant. So they've, in some respects, they've got some very favorable funding lined up for some of their infrastructure.
Right, but apparently it's just such a heavy assessment of the $30,000 to $40,000 to $50,000 on their homes that it's kind of keeping them from entering our city limits.
Right. I'd say there's in this case there's somewhat apples and oranges. This neighborhood is already in respect when they bought their homes. Those were the streets that were built to provide access, and then ultimately the cost of those streets were divided up. So this neighborhood, whether it's a commercial property, a residential property, multifamily property, they've already paid for all their streets, and now after they've been in the city for almost 50 years, they've been paying these fees for that time. Now we come in and actually do the maintenance. Different situation that it probably fits a different conversation for a Prairie Meadows standpoint when their streets today are gravel. Okay.
Right, but down the road, if they came on board and there are options that maybe they could look at this money at 1% interest to help them with their infrastructure needs.
Sure. Yep.
That's a possibility.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Muck.
Let me come back to the topic at hand, if we could. I wanted to just, the thing that always throws me is when you use words like hot soils. I know that this neighborhood, over the period of time that I've been on the council, has had numerous, I've lost track of how many water main breaks in that area, in addition to this flooding. You talked about hot soils and that being, well, how does that connect to that water main break issue?
So a number of the water mains out there, when they were installed 30, 40, 50 years ago, were just normal ductile iron pipe. And there's an acidity in those soils that we've come to know that over the last 30, 40, 50 years, that acidity is ate through those steel pipes. So the way you get ahead of that is you either wrap those pipes in a poly sock, if you will, almost like a garbage sack, or you put in PVC pipes. And so that's where we've done, I've lost track, probably over 100 blocks in this area to actually go in when some of these areas, unfortunately, it just wasn't common practice at the time to do some of those additional steps. But I remember we had 2 block stretch that had 6 water main breaks. Right. And so those elevate to the front, and then we ultimately get out there. So those customers are not unduly out of water or wastewater services.
So a hot soil then is acidic, and it tends to eat that metal pipe,
yes.
Essentially.
Yeah, so it needs a protection, which you can get it a few different ways.
So we're not going to take the soils out, we're just going to put in pipes that can take it, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Then just my comment then is, as representing the Central District and having lived in the Edison neighborhood, I know the difference. These people, this neighborhood is going to be thrilled by the changes in their neighborhood when it comes to rain. This is a massive project and a wonderful gift for them. One last question though, the timing, the color coding on the phasing, can you talk about that for a minute? I'm sorry.
Right, I think we'd probably, potentially phase this one too. and extreme. But the contractor, essentially, there's a phasing plan whether you're west or if you're east of Marion Road. We've got to make sure we can still get these property owners in and out for their daily commutes. And so there's multiple phases that have been laid out that they can start on accordingly to a schedule. We highlighted the underground detention that we don't want them to start till after June so we can get through spring rugby. And then there is a couple of phases, some of the sort of the extremities where we just know in those areas the pavement's tired, so we're going to go into a mill and overlay. We're going to allow some of that work to be done in 2019. We'll likely see the park get restored in 2019 as well with just that level of disruption. But essentially the different colors are different phases that the contractor has to follow so we can build the system in an organized fashion but also maintain some level of access to that neighborhood.
So most of it happens in 18. Some of it will happen in 19.
That's exactly right. The majority of it, I would say 85% of this will happen in 2018.
That's
amazing. And we're going to bid the project in mid-February.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Neitzer.
Thank you. So looking at the project cost slide where you showed the two different numbers, I assume that the incremental difference is things that are not directly drainage related, such as street reconstruction, park restoration, that's all, and that would be a second penny funded item, is that?
That's true, and you also have some water funds. So like if we go into an area and we're going to replace a number of water mains, the water fund pays for those. So that's the difference. The ones that qualify for storm drainage will ultimately be funded with that 8.4. There's also, since those numbers are different, we still have a contingency. We've got engineering, we've got construction administration, and so that's where we feel the appropriate breakdown is for this particular loan that the storm drainage fund will repay.
Thank you. And I just want to point out that I've heard some scuttlebutt that we're borrowing money and there's something nefarious about it, but I would point out that we're getting an effective 1% interest rate, and with construction inflation far higher than that, it's simply a mathematical issue. It's a cash flow issue. It's cheaper to borrow the money now and get the work done rather than saving the money. It's just, and it also allows us to cash flow and work on some other projects. There's nothing nefarious. The city's not out of money. It's a simple math issue. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilor. Councilor Vice Chair Erickson.
Thank you. Mark, thanks for your presentation. It's been a while since we've had the amount of color on our maps from you, so I appreciate that. Thanks for your forward thinking with this. I mean, I know this has been a project that has been really planned for quite some time, and while it's not super exciting for maybe some, for those property owners to have this addressed, this is a huge thing to protect those properties, as well as maintaining our system. We really owe it to the rest of the users to maintaining it. It kind of trickles down. And so thank you for your work on this. I know it's been a huge process to get to this point, and look forward to moving it along. So with that, I'll move to approve to the next meeting.
Thank you, Council Vice Chair. Thank you, Councilor Rolfing. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
That has passed 8-0. Item 10.
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing supplemental appropriations, transit, $100,000.
Thanks, Jim.
That's right.
Thank you, Jim. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Scott Rust, City Finance Office. This supplemental appropriation tonight is for a new maintenance bus lift over at the transit garage. Earlier this year, we had an unfortunate incident where the lift failed with a piece of equipment on it, and the good thing is the safety devices worked. No one got hurt or equipment didn't get damaged. Unfortunately, it damaged the lift to the tune of about $63,000 in damage. So again, this bus lift was purchased back in 2001. It did fail earlier this year with a 29,000-pound bus on it. Requires a substantial amount of damage. What I'm asking for is your support for a supplemental appropriation to really replace this lift, because the lift that we currently have is what I would say is it's got some repairs that really should not be made. The parts would have to be fabricated in order to make it usable again. Cost is approximately $91,000 plus installation. So again, I'd like your support. On this project, the funding for this project will be coming from fund balance within the capital fund. We've done a good job saving some money there on projects that we've bid earlier this year, so we have the money to purchase this. So if you have any questions, please feel free.
Scott, thank you. Council? Yes, Councilor Silbersher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome.
What's the usual life expectancy of a bus lift?
Probably about 15 years. Like go up and down quite a few times in a day. When you're putting 29,000 pounds on it multiple times every day, they do take a toll. Again, a part just failed. Really what happened is a hydraulic cylinder failed. And then once one failed, the other failed. It caught on its safety catches and it stopped. And then from there, we had to basically jack the lift up and then manually lower it down. When that thing dropped, it broke all the welds on the platform of the lift. So really, it's more than just replacing parts. It's now welding the thing back together. And quite honestly, with people's lives at stake and working underneath this thing, I would not recommend making $63,000 of repairs on something that's going to cost us approximately $90-some thousand to fix or to replace.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Council, would anybody want to set this date of hearing second reading for this item?
So moved, Urbanbach.
Council Chair Kylie made that motion, second by Councilor Urbanbach. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson? Yes. Urbanbach?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 11.
A resolution establishing a pay-for-performance program for the City Council-appointed positions of budget analyst, city clerk, internal auditor, internal audit manager, and the City Council operations manager.
Good evening, councilors, mayor. This proposal is an annual adjustment to the City Council appointed staff salary. It's an adjustment of 1.5%, which is the COLA. Happy answering your questions.
Thanks, Jim. Folks, is there anybody who wanted to engage the council on this topic? It's a resolution, so you have that opportunity.
Move to approve Erickson.
Thank you.
Second, Rolfing.
Council Vice Chair Erickson has made a motion to approve this resolution, second by Councilor Rolfing. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Urbanbach?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you. Item 12.
A resolution of the City of Sioux Falls receiving the 2017 Annexation Task Force report.
Good evening, Michael.
Mike Cooper again with Planning and Building Services. I'll start this off. Last week at the council informational meeting, we did present a pretty good overview of the task force report and the recommendations. This task force was put together by the City Council, and it came about because the staff was looking at some direction of how to deal with going forward areas that are not in the city limits, either surrounded by current city limits or that are in the path of the future growth of our city limits. And so the task force came up with about 5 different areas that they keyed on. The first one had to do with communications, and that was everything from recommendations on talking to neighborhoods that have existing pre-annexation agreements to going forward and talking to neighborhoods more proactively about future capital projects. And then also, if there is a city-initiated annexation, to ensure that the property owners are aware of the process and that have received the proper notification. The second area was really important because we talked about what type of criteria could we use going forward to consider city-initiated annexations. And we spent a lot of time with the task force talking about those and listing those. And so those, again, would provide us some good direction for the future. We also talked about some direction for minimum standards of infrastructure improvements. And early on, as we were talking to some of these neighborhoods, the big issue was the cost of annexation and urban infrastructure. And we've already heard mentioned tonight about $30,000 to $40,000 to $50,000 assessments. And that's really a deal breaker for a lot of people in more ways than one. And so again, I think a big outcome of this recommendation going forward is looking at options for rural residential or rural subdivision standards. So things such as eliminating curb and gutter, going with septic systems, and those kind of infrastructure that you would typically see with some of our existing rural subdivisions. We also spent time talking about the financial impact of annexations. Again, if there was a city-initiated annexation, by state law, there's specific requirements that we have to go through in terms of analysis of what will the financial impacts be to the city with annexation and also to the property owners. And a lot of discussion went forward with looking at what some of those factors should be as we do those analysis of those financial studies or annexation studies. And then finally, we talked about different definitions of terms that are included in some of the recommendations. So with your approval of this resolution tonight, what will the next steps be? The next steps will be that staff will take these recommendations and look at putting them into policy documents as well as ordinance amendments going forward. For example, the minimum standards for infrastructure improvements will be an amendment to our engineering design standards, and that would typically go to Infrastructure Review Advisory Board and then to City Council. So since the presentation at the last informational meeting, we did receive one recommended revision to two different areas within the task force recommendations. One had to do with the process for changing from septic systems to city sanitary sewer, and the other recommended change was to look at additional criteria as far as the financial impact to property owners with the city-initiated annexation. And so what I would say is that as we go forward with putting these recommendations into policy documents, as well as ordinances that would come back to the council, there will be opportunity for additional public review, public comment, and we'll probably hear from other citizens or other ideas of going forward with this before we finalize it. And we're certainly open to doing that. But we want to get started on putting these final proposals together so that we can begin implementing the recommendations that are coming out of the task force. Councilor Kiley chaired this process, so I will just stop there. And Mayor, I'll be available for any questions that might come forward. So thank you very much for putting this together.
Mike, thank you, and I know the council will have that opportunity too. Folks, it's a resolution, so you actually have the ability to talk with the council on this. Is anybody interested in doing that? Welcome. Folks, if you want to, just come forward to the front row if you don't mind. Welcome, sir.
Good evening.
Hi.
Kevin Gallo from Split Rock Heights subdivision. As Mr. Cooper mentioned, we did after the informational meeting have some concerns about a couple points that were in the current version of the task force. And as this version will be the starting point, we'd really like to get our recommended changes in at the ground rather than have to come piecemeal when ordinances or other issues come before the council related to this document and the resulting documents that come out of it. After the meeting, during the meeting, for example, Councilmember Staley specifically addressed the septic system issue and asked, was a consensus reached about how long residents can keep their current systems? And Mr. Cooper said, as long as it was meeting requirements of properly functioning septic system. And that contradicted what was in and what is in the current document. So we immediately discussed it with him after the informational meeting. He said, go ahead and send us recommendations. We were surprised they weren't included. The way it currently reads on page 7 of the current document, it does state that a private wastewater disposal system is an option, but it must comply with applicable laws. Sounds great. But the statement immediately after that says, after service is available and notice is received from the city, connection to a city sanitary sewer system must be made within 5 years or through an agreement. So to those of us in the developments that already have septic system, that sounds like that second statement supersedes the first statement, such that as soon as the city comes in with a sewer system, you have to hook up. All we were recommending was a statement that says, if no private system exists or an existing system no longer complies with standards in effect when the system was installed, then connection to the city sanitary sewer system must be made within 5 years or through an agreement. That's our requested change on that item. On the second item, considering financial impact of annexation on property owners prior to proceeding with annexation, as Mr. Cooper described, we, in areas that, and this pertains to areas that already are developed, rural developments that the city would like to annex. We've already got, water lines, landscaping around these water lines, vegetation, asphalt, concrete, pavement, and all we're asking is that, along with the other considerations, the city should consider offsetting the assessment expenses to residents based on replacement costs of this property, the vegetation, landscaping, pavement, etc., that results from city-required infrastructure modifications. For example, a new water line required, or wastewater, or new roads to the residential property. So those were the two issues. We really appreciate if those could be included before this document moves forward, rather than, again, having residents of our development or another development have to come to each single meeting where a specific area of this is addressed and made into a standard or an ordinance for the city to move forward. Thank you.
You bet. Kevin, thank you as well. Appreciate it. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council on this topic? Councilors? Any comment? Yes, Councilor Rolfing.
As I understand this, and Mike, by passing this resolution, what you're going to do is we're looking at the task force findings, and as policy changes in any one of those 5 areas, you will come back to us with those policies, and so that we'll have another vote on it?
Yeah, this task force report is not the end of all the process.
Right.
These are recommendations. If you recall, when we had a city council transit task force, and in that report there was a number of items that we had to take forward, and many of those did come back to the council. So again, what we're hearing tonight, we will take seriously. We will look at that, but there might be other public comments or other considerations that we haven't heard yet that we want to include in the final policy statements, as well as any ordinance amendments. And we will certainly do that.
Super. Thank you.
Councilor Seeley?
Well, so I just have a question. As this is evolving, can we make amendments to this, to the resolution?
Mike, any recommendations on this resolution?
Well, he just came forward, so I didn't have a chance, to prepare anything. But let's say we want, can we take, for example, what his wording here and inject this
So
now?
the resolution is receiving. You're receiving the task force report. That report was voted on by the task force, and they're bringing that recommendation to the city council, to the administration. So from there, the next step, as I've said a couple of times tonight, is that we will take these recommendations and work with them, and very likely they will be amended or modified.
Okay, so
the
answer
to vote
is
on any
no.
amendments tonight is really probably not the right process to go through, from my opinion.
Okay.
Council? Yeah. Yes, I'm so sorry, Councilor Iser.
Thank you. I would just say, yeah, we're accepting a report as a city council, which was voted on by the task force. And the suggestions that were made by the gentleman there, I think are very valid considerations that would be good to look at as they come forward, but they're technical enough that I think it needs to be deliberative and slow and not some, even if we could do it tonight, I don't think you just make that change at 11:59. So, but I think it's worth a discussion as each item comes forward. So.
Councilor Nice, thank you. Councilor Chair Conley.
Unless anybody else has anything else to say on the topic, I just once again, looks like Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis, you don't. No, you were past it. Mr. Davis.
The only thing I want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I apologize, and this isn't, I'm so sorry. I'm looking at all of you. We've already moved past that time with public input unless there's a councilor who has a question for Mr. Davis or.
From a task force standpoint?
I would just ask that
Councilor Urbanbach.
I would just ask that he be allowed to finish his statement.
Mr. Davis.
The only thing that I wanted to say was the clarity on the language on the septic systems. It was very clear in the task force that the language read, if it was in the condition on the year it was installed and in proper operating condition, it was still a qualifying system. That's all I had.
Thank you. Councilor Urbanbach, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Chair Kiley.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Davis was one of our task force members, so I greatly appreciate the additional comments. And I just would like to once again recognize the citizen members that took a number of hours and days out of their personal schedules to participate in this worthy cause. And we just met one, Jeff Davis, Tina Haraldson, Matt Metzger, and Greg Starnes. I haven't seen the others. Are any of you here other than Mr. Davis? And then on the council side, we had Councilor Neitzer and Councilor Selberg that participated. And gentlemen, I greatly appreciate your input and time and effort as well. And then Director Cooper had a number of his members, Albert Schmidt and Deborah Gajekowski, who thought she could hide from me tonight by sitting over here to the right in the back. They served as great resources, and they put in countless hours on this project as well. So, and then lastly, many of you that are here this evening from the different subdivisions and individuals who had concern about the annexation process, I thank you for your participation over the course of the 8 meetings, your participation through last week's informational, as well as your participation here this evening. Thank you very much.
Councilor Chair Kiley, do you want to make a motion to approve this resolution?
I would be very happy to do so.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Neitzer.
Councilor Neitzer, thank you. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Urbanbach?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 13.
A resolution establishing the City of Sioux Falls legislative priorities for the 2018 state legislative session.
Jim, good evening.
Yep. Good evening. Jim David again, Operations Manager for the City Council. Each year, the City Council reviews their legislative priorities prior to the preceding legislative session. What makes this year unique is that there was collaboration with Minnehaha County and some of the surrounding communities. They included Sioux Falls, Del Rapids, Crooks, Hartford, Worthing, and Garrettson. These elected representatives from these area communities came together to identify a total of 9 different priorities before the legislative session. If we go in order, beginning with number 1, the first one is supporting a reliable statewide emergency radio system and making sure that the existing system, which is probably going to be obsolete in around 2024, 2025, is replaced with something called P25 or Project 25, and this supports the state funding this program. Item 2 supports repealing the sunset on the 911 surcharge and making sure to hold those telecom companies accountable for remitting those taxes, not just on the cellular service, but also on items such as track phones. Number 3 supports alternative publication options for all local government. Number 4 is a general statement of support for workforce housing. Number 5 is support for a local option gross receipts tax that resembles what currently exists for cities called an entertainment tax. Number 6, this is the first time that this item has appeared. This is a statement of support for tax increment financing and local control of tax increment financing. Number 7 supports local control when it comes to reimbursing citizens who serve on volunteer boards. Number 8 is a general support for providing or general statement of support for additional funding for drug and alcohol education, intervention, and treatment programs. Number 9 is a statement that has been in your priorities for the last few years. It just supports those cooperative arrangements that already exist. Thank you. And existing relationships with the county and the cities. Happy answering your questions.
Jim, thank you. Before I go to the council, anybody in the audience want to speak to this item? Councilors? Councilor Staley?
I personally am opposed to number 6, and I would like to see our state get a little more involved in regulating TIFs. So I'm not going to be supporting this.
Yes, Councilor Vice Chair Erickson.
I just want to be clear on number 6, since it was brought out on this, that this allows some local control. There are some changes and some bills being proposed in the legislature. They are in draft form right now. We do not have copies of them yet, but they should be shared soon from the Department of Revenue. We have had representation from the Municipal League, as well as our Sioux Falls Chamber, as well as many others from around the state that have tried to find ways to make this one tool that we have more workable. One of the things coming out of the task force, which our Economic Development Department, Darren Ketchum and Brent O'Neill, have already obliged to, without even being asked, they have a TIF dashboard, if you will, and have provided that to the state. They are very appreciative of that information and are looking at using that TIF dashboard that they have created statewide, and that information will be accessible on a platform through Department of Revenue. I'm not exactly sure where at this time, but that was an effort that came out of the task force as well. So there are some changes taking place and some good things, and from all of that task force, there's been a lot of collaboration between county, city, and the state, and we beg for that. And so that was a great thing that happened from that task force as well. I'm not certain of any other changes at this point, but I think that, you know, this is one thing that we're able to create some local, leave the local control there so we can continue to work with the state. So I'd ask my colleagues to support this, and I will make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's been a motion to approve this resolution establishing the legislative priorities, and it has been seconded. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
No.
That is passed 7-1. Thank you. Council, any other? Yes, Councilor Starr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could have a point of personal privilege, if I may.
Sure.
I believe tonight is Attorney Sage's first time advising us, and I believe we were relatively easy on him, and want to thank him for his service and being here tonight with us for the first time.
Ryan, thank you. Folks, very good. A motion to adjourn?
I'd move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
It has been seconded as well. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Sioux Falls. Make it a great night.